Da da da! What's my good cheer? Take the last of it. It's the end of my day. Grateful for my day. Grateful for that job that helps to keep me out of my head from floating away like a big bouquet of helium balloons sometimes. I apologize for being so late tonight, but I did have a meeting, an appointment that I had to make sure that I was available for. It's all over and done with. Perfect. We are here now. And because it's so late, I thought maybe because we're on this word progress, that maybe the perspective isn't so important, but maybe we could have a bedtime story, a story of my life, but something that might give you a little bit different perspective about this word progress, right? Because it means a little bit different depending on how your life looks, your goals, your dreams, your family situation or not, right? Sometimes it's in our schooling, right? Going to school. Sometimes it's just in our own mentality, right? That sometimes we become so unconfident. We don't become unconfident, but sometimes we find ourselves in that situation where we just don't have that courage or that gumption, or we look at other people and things look so easy for them, but are in actuality very, very difficult for us. Well, this is part of those things when I say, each one of us has a handicap, and some of those handicaps are visible. Sometimes those handicaps are not visible, but it doesn't make them any less a handicap. One of my very best friends, somebody I loved so much, and you can tell I'm talking about him in a plural term. One of those beautiful, beautiful souls who didn't make it, but you would never know his handicaps because, right, sometimes it's in that pride, sometimes it's in that reflection and that mirrored back by society about how we're supposed to look or how we're supposed to act or how we're supposed to live, right, how we're supposed to get along with others. For me, I was always an introverted extrovert. I would prefer just to, right, be on my own. But it just never seemed like the case in my life. There was always a relationship going on, trauma bonding going on, responsibilities, family responsibilities, some of those goals and dreams that we have, like, as a little girl wanting to grow up and get married, right? So this is all a bunch of mix that, because we're quite often doing this stuff because it's the norm, it's expected, it's women grow up to have babies and get married and, right, do the housework, and now they work too, and, right, but things change. And when we're talking about progress, right, change, one of my favorite words in the entire world, right? Because it got me here. It got me through a lot of difficult times because I was able to ride waves, adapt and conquer, right? Never give up, try another way, and here I am, right? And here I am, and that in itself is progress, because it wouldn't even been a thought in my mind. It wouldn't have been something that I would considered a possibility, number one. And the digital age, right? Me growing up, this would have been Jetson stuff. This would have been total impossibility. And here I am as a baby boomer, right? Spewing my thing online. How incredible is that? Right? As a baby boomer, even, right? Because you got to remember a lot of people, well, a lot more people are online now, but you can thank COVID for that, right? Being locked down, if you wanted to spend time with your kids or your grandkids and stuff, you had to learn to do it online, right? You had to learn to do the Zoom calls and the right, the Facebook and the mess. You had to learn to do that, and it's an absolutely fabulous thing that we're able to do that because people were already growing up and leaving towns and cities where they grew up and right leaving the nest just didn't mean moving down a couple of blocks and buying your own house like the good old days. No, you're moving across the country, if not to another country, right? I don't know how I started getting into that, right? But it all ties into that progress. So hopefully you find something in that. I'll have to come back in there to see if there's something for me. It usually is when I stray off like that. But I wanted to do a little bit of a story time in my own life. Me growing up in this dynamic family that I grew up in, you know, with the extremes, the very difficult and the absolute dazzle and amaze and the joy for life, right? All of that in there was like I was not going to say a tug of war, right? Because my mother would have let go and my dad would have gone flying because he would have been tugging so hard. But it was a pot being stirred in my entire life, and that's how I felt growing up, right? Realizing, as an adult looking at it and realizing that it was so much different and so much more complicated than what I thought, right? Because as kids, we're always looking at situations and relationships and experiences for how it makes us feel, right? And we don't usually take into consideration the other person very much, do we? Right? Those selfish kids that are born and already asking for their iPhones, right? And you think, oh my goodness, like, your mom or dad had to work a whole month to pay for that. And you cracked the screen in the whole week, in the first week, and you're already asking for a new phone. But then again, as when we were kids, we did the exact same thing with our parents. Oh, that's the old folky music, or right, the way they lived. We had dial up phones growing up. I remember living on a farm and we had party line where we probably had six or seven different families using the same phone line and right and an emergency calls, it's an emergency, can you like end your phone call, or right, or oh my goodness, and they're still on the phone, they've been talking for hours already, or oops, sorry, I didn't mean to jump into that conversation, but I was just waiting to see if maybe the phone was available, and then picking up on each other's information, where nowadays it's the cell phones, right? And right, it's handless now, right? Just it's just going to get so beyond us, right? And as a baby boomer, I'm grateful that I'm invited to this party because I could very easily tune out and not even connect with the outside world in any way. I'd be just going to my job, trauma bonding with my sister, right? Getting groceries, hanging out at my house, right? My adventures, but all of that would have been for me. And that idea, you get what you give in this world, would have gone right past me. And It could have been easily a different story altogether. Okay, back to this, and maybe this part. If you didn't get something out of that, I don't know what you'll get, but I'll come back and check it out. Maybe you'll get something out of this because I was thinking, before I was making my coffee, I was thinking, what will I talk to tie off this word progress for the week? And I thought, would it be really good if I could end it with a story? And that was earlier in the day. And then I kind of changed my mind, but then it came back when it was so late at night. And I thought, oh, okay, bedtime story. And as soon as I said bedtime story, and I said, you know what? Let's talk about this one. For those of you who've been hanging out with me for any length of time, my father had congenital heart disease. It was diagnosed in him in his teens or early 20s. He didn't expect to live very long. He didn't expect to live very long. And my father loved life. And as much as I had a dynamic upbringing, it compares to nothing to the upbringing my father got, right? Because my grandfather was an alcoholic from hell. He was totally abusive to my father. Um, Even denied his own lineage, and just, but only when he was drunk. The thing is, when he was sober, he was hardworking, responsible, caring, funny, smart. But when he was a drunk, he was an absolute demon. And he destroyed my father and destroyed his whole family, because I remember my grandmother kicking him out of the house so many times. He was so bad. He was one of those downtown alcoholics, right? So my dad got diagnosed with congenital heart disease. His relationship with his father was still there, in that idea of honor thy mother, thy father. But my grandfather wasn't around very much because he wasn't allowed to, because he was a chronic alcoholic, and his my grandmother wasn't going to have anything to do with it. And my father was so disillusioned and so broken by that relationship that, right? And my dad had his own family, right? Well, we'll get into that. I'm moving way ahead of myself, because I've just said that he just got diagnosed at 19 or 20, right? My father never expected to live long enough to have a family, and yet he was able to get married, and he had 4 children. My father saw me. Was I the only child that graduated from high school that he saw? I think I was the last child that graduated from high school before my father passed away. So my father doubled his lifespan, and he had lots of neat tricks in order to do that. But I didn't really recognize it until some of these lessons that I'm getting, and it was in his progress and in his learning those lessons. But to this bedtime story, right? How it ties in with my grandfather being an alcoholic and addiction being in my family. Epigenetically, it goes back. It's just not alcohol, it's food too. I had 2 uncles on my mother's side who were over 500 pounds. One was over 500 pounds, the other one was over 600 pounds. My grandmother on my father's side was over 500 pounds, and she actually had a heart attack. And because of the weight, she lost all the weight, and she, right? I recognize it for what it is now, but she got a second chance at life, and she got a few more years after that, joyous, happy, right? Years after that, when her life was totally miserable for her, as far as I remember before that, right? So my father, because of his diagnosis, he woke up every single morning thinking that maybe today would be the last day of his life, right? But he was determined to live his life. He lived his life to the hilt. And in living his life to the hilt, right? He had a family and he took his family along for that ride. And because every day he woke up to that idea that today might be my last day, every day was an adventure for him, right? Now, it wasn't always a big adventure for us as a family because my dad was a compulsive gambler. So lots of times, right, we'd be in difficult situations because of that. But my dad was a commercial fisherman too, and he went away 3 times a year for months at a time. So we didn't get to see him consistently all the time. I'm just kind of feeding you stuff so you can kind of get an idea of this, right? Um, and then on top of that, when he was home, he drove cab. He had a cab in between his fishing and he worked the midnight shift. So, being kids, we didn't get to see much of our dad during the day. Maybe when he came home for dinner on his breaks or when he got up before he had to go off to work, we would see him a little bit before we go to bed. But for the most part, right, my dad was working hard. Both my parents were hard workers. But my dad was a hard player. He loved to have fun. He loved to have adventures. We went out on lots of them, but lots of those adventures were his adventures, the things that he did. And you might not say there's any progress in that at all. You know, I look back at my dad's exuberance. He was so tied up into living a life, filling his life up with absolutely anything and everything that he could get his hands on that he thought might bring an experience, bring some joy. It was all about the experience, my father. But my father did do something that was so full of progress. And it was something I didn't learn about until my father had already passed away and had been gone for 10 or 15 years already. And, and, my father, uh, had a problem with my grandpa drinking. Like, I never saw my dad drinking. Maybe on occasion on Christmas parties or New Year's Eve, he'd go off with friends and maybe have a cocktail or something. I thought because my dad was a very social person, right? But I never saw my dad ever drinking. And one time, uh, I came home from school and I couldn't get the bathroom door open, right? And my dad's congenital heart disease. I thought I saw my dad lying on the bathroom floor. Oh my goodness, it just freaked me right out because my dad was giving me these talks, like all of us kids talks about, right? He wanted us to be prepared for when it happened. And we called the ambulance and it took the paramedics like a long time to get into the bathroom and right, revive him and stuff. And we didn't even know what happened. All we knew is we were so grateful that my dad was alive, that you're right, he wasn't gone because right, I was always so afraid that he was going to pass away, right? Because of these talks we had and because we knew what his condition was and what was going on with him. Well, it turned out that my dad was passed out drunk. Never saw my dad, right, drunk again after that situation. Never, ever, ever did I see him drunk. That was the one time. And I ended up calling the ambulance, right? And my mom was at work and all us sisters were trying to wake him up and get in the bathroom and right, try to save his life, we were thinking, not realizing my dad was drunk and passed out. When it comes to progress, you guys, um, let's go back to now. This why I found out after my father had passed away, like decades after my father passed away, 15 years probably. My husband was in the military and he was going on tour and he wanted to pack up the house because economically it would be make sense to pack up the house, and he asked if I would go and stay with my mother. guys, right? I wasn't going to be playing around or anything. But, right, he asked me to go stay with my mom while he was away on tour. He went to Croatia for 6 months. Didn't want to. I had such a bad relationship with my mother growing up. I did never want to step foot in a living situation in my mother's house, right? Visits, birthdays, I could do that, but to live with her, didn't want to do it. But my husband, right, he was adamant and I agreed. And I went, stayed with my mother for 6 months. In those 6 months, I spent them anytime in deep conversation with my mother, trying to find out some of those answers that I'd always asked myself, right? All those whys to all those experiences I had, and try to get some resolution. And this isn't about any of those resolutions, not even about my mother, except for the fact something that my mother told me. She says, "Oh, Cindy," she says, you thought your dad was an angel, but your dad drank." I said, "What? Dad didn't drink." "Oh, yeah, your dad was a drinker." I said, "What are you talking about? I never saw dad drinking." And my mom said, because of his experience with his father, he didn't want his kids, my dad didn't want his kids to have the same experience with like he had with his dad. And he forbade himself to ever let us see him come home drunk or be drunk. And yet, as a 30-year-old woman, I'm finding out for the first time that my dad, he was a drinker. So he wasn't just a compulsive gambler. I don't know if he was an alcoholic, but he was a pretty active drinker, my mother said. And it kind of, right? It was interesting. I was very surprised about it, but I just let it go. And I never thought anything about it, right? But then in the lessons that we've had in the past, well, it was cool. I've had at the very least, right? In the past few years, I've come to realize that was progress, because none of us girls, right? He had 4 girls, no boys. None of us girls are drinkers. Like, not even not even really casual drinkers. Maybe my sister Alice, she likes to party a little bit, but none of us became alcoholics, right? We all became maybe those social drinkers. We're not saying we never ever got drunk, because there were, right? Cindy got drunk a few times in her lifetime for sure. And I worked in bars and nightclubs for 15 years around alcoholics and heavy drinkers, and still never picked up that habit. Especially curious, especially because I have a very addictive personality, right? Alcoholism does run in my family, but because it wasn't in my life that my dad hid it, right? What you think about is realized, and you are like the 5 people that you surround yourself with. I didn't realize my dad wasn't a drinker, right? None of us girls did. So it would make sense that we would grow up not having that alcohol in our lives, right? Epigenetically, I think alcoholism has played a pretty large role in keeping our family, right, from achieving what we were truly meant to achieve. And what that is, right? We're working on that. We're paddling water, and we might not ever achieve or realize what that could have been. But that's progress, isn't it? Isn't that? I'm carrying on in that little bit of progress that my dad did in the healing of his family. Maybe my grandmother too, in that contribution, right? And I'm picking that up now. I'm picking that baton up, and I'm going to try and do my fair share, right? And I think I'm doing it to the best of my ability at the very least, right? But I'm looking out at the world. Everybody's bumbling along, right? Just a bunch of bumper cars bumping into each other, right? Absorbing, mirroring, judging, right? And I don't know. I think it's kind of neat, the influence and the way the influence gets to us, because in a way, my father influenced us greatly because, especially me working in bars, right, for those 15 years, if I'd known that my father was a drinker in those difficult times, because in that time that I was working in the bars, there were difficult times because at the same time, I was in my own throes of addiction, which was the gambling. Well, of course, the food too, but the gambling, right? I was a gambling, and I have not gambled in 4 years, not even a lottery ticket, you guys. I did a 50-50 accidentally for the seniors association that goes in our building, and they do 50-50s in the building a couple of times a year, right? And they asked me, and I said, oh, sure, here's my money. And then after I filled out the little form, I realized, oh my goodness, this is actually gambling. And what did I do? I said, I hope I don't win. I hope I don't win. I didn't win, right? But what if I had? Oh my goodness, that would have made me feel absolutely terrible. And at the same time, in those bad, difficult moments, I'll go, oh, remember how good you felt when you won that 50-50? Go on, Cindy, go take $20 and go put it in a video lottery terminal. Maybe you could turn it into 1,000. And this is the way I would talk to myself, and then blow absolutely everything and go, oh my goodness, I don't even have milk. And then I have to borrow $20 off of somebody to get the milk and the bread, and right. And I'll go, oh my goodness, but maybe I can turn this into groceries for the weekend. I blow the $20 too that I would borrow to put gas in the car, milk on my husband's syrup, or whatever it was, right? Oh my goodness. Addictions are a crazy thing, right? My dad was very, very creative in how we got that alcoholism. Like, even my nieces and nephews, none of them drink. None of them. None of us drink. That's two generations after my father, and none of us are drinkers. Is that not absolutely incredible? That's progress. That's healing within a family. That's healing within a family. 100%. And that's progress. And that's an example to people out there, right? And like I said, it wasn't like my grandpa was a bad person. He was not a nice person when he was drinking, right? You relax, and the people that you are what comes out when you're drinking. And right, my grandpa was dealing with a soul that wasn't very accommodating, right? And that happens. As much as souls end up with crappy humans, humans end up with crappy souls too. And that's the God honest that's the God honest truth, right? I was just thinking of my sisters there. Right? Right? Yeah. But progress, you guys. Being creative. And if you're not doing it for yourself, you do it for your kids. You do it for your grandkids, right? Do it for that little kid that lives next door that doesn't have a dad, right? Show them your garage. You know how to fix cars? Maybe you can show them. It's beautiful, beautiful trait that the Hutterites, the Mennonites, right? If I were going to reincarnate, I'd say, oh my goodness, let's be a Mennonite, right? Or a Hutterite. I think I would do very, very well in a Hutterite community, or Well, an Amish community, maybe, right? Well, I think I would do very, very well. I don't think any one of us gets to really choose what nationality, right? It's not like a menu with check boxes that you're gonna just check this, and this. It's whatever the lessons that you're missing, right? And I got some doozy lessons, but I'm going to see if I can get them to serve me well. And if they do serve me well, right? And I show up fresh like a loaf of bread, right? And I just serve them out there, right? Just serve them out, show and tell, you guys, right? Right? Until I can find another way to give back. But what a perfect way living in this digital age where, I right, 100 years ago I wouldn't have had a chance in hell, and that's the god honest truth. And I think I probably, for as many people are waking up in these, you know these times that we live in, right, if we didn't have the internet, if we didn't have this digital age, if we didn't have this opportunity to search out answers for ourselves, we'd probably still be taking our lessons and our answers from people, right, who don't always represent the way that they would like to. There we go, right? Just sometimes it's just the way it works out. Like I said, sometimes, right? Well, we'll save that conversation because that word's coming anyway. I know it. I know it is. You guys, progress. It's a each one of us has a different perspective, right? It all depends. If you were entrepreneurs striving to start your own business, progress would be how close are you to starting that 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 business. If you were newly married and you're looking towards, right, having your children, and then you start having your children and you buy your first home and your first car, and oh my goodness, that's all progress, right? You graduate high school, you go to college, go to university, you become a doctor. You look at it, progress. And then if you look at it, right? If you look at that, here it is, right? This is where you start when it comes to progress. And if you look at everything when it comes to everything, it's moving forward, progress, moving. I know I talk a lot with my hands, right? And I got my hands up against my faces because it's right. Look at my hands. Don't look at my glasses. Don't, right. But progress is that moving forward, and even for me, right? This week, I had $4 to last me. I was going to go 10 days on $4, right? Positive I was going to do it. But already you can see I was running out of coffee and stuff. And you know what? We're back on track again. I'm going to, right? Easy breezy. And we're going to get these glasses ordered. But that's progress for me because, in actuality, I work part time in a little thrift store, working my brand, putting a roof over my head, right? And I'm getting it done. I'm getting it done. And that's progress because, right, there was a time where I would be so discouraged by what I was not getting done. Oh, you got a chip on your tooth. Oh, right, glasses. Oh, you're in a little studio apartment, right? Oh, your miserable part-time job. And it's not miserable. I love my job, right? But I'm just as an example that how we can just grumble, 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 and not realize that, oh my goodness, we're actually doing okay. We're on track. We're making progress, right? I don't see my glasses right now, but I'm taking accountability to myself, and I actually put myself on a bit of a money diet to get it done. And that's progress, right? Just moving forward in some aspect of our life, right? Just keep going. Don't stop. Don't, right? Sometimes we're a spectator, sometimes we're a student, right? But we're learning in that process, right? Right? We're not we're not watching TV, hopefully, without absorbing, right? Absorbing and learning and experiencing and living vicariously, right? First person to save my butt was Pippi Longstockings. I tell you, living vicariously through a television character, I know all about that. And it, right? And I'm not going to apologize for that, because I think part of that youthful, adventurous, and accepting of my situation comes from that television show. And if you don't know Pippi Longstockings, I think it's a Finnish, is that how you say it? Finnish, Finnish television show that they subbed in English subs, and it was really popular in the 70s. And I was so hard onto that television show. Now, why was I talking about? Oh, talking about influence and talking about those things that we cling on to sometimes just to get us through. And it got us through. And guess what? It's progress, right? It all adds up, right? It all adds up. And I was going to go a little bit deeper in that, but it's already after 11 o'clock, you guys, and I am banked from my day, and I've got to be up early tomorrow. So I'll be able to do my live show a little bit earlier than what I did tonight, because I'm not working into the evening. I'll be home in the early evening, so I'll be able to do a live show right away. And yeah, oh my goodness, we're not doing a live show tomorrow, right? I'll be doing an angel card on my Instagram. Saturdays I spend on Instagram. Sunday night though, I'll be back, you guys, on Sunday night if you want to pop in 7:30 Central with Chatters Live. It's a good time, you guys. It's really a good time. And I'm working on a video, so I'm not sure if we're going to get that up tomorrow night or if we're going to get that up Sunday after. Oh, we won't get it up Sunday afternoon, so it'll be tomorrow night or it'll be Monday when it. Oh, might not even go. No, it'll be Monday for sure, because well, I have to work Monday, but not till later on in the evening. But yeah, okay, you guys, that's it for tonight. Have a great night, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Bye bye.